Howdy everybody. Here to do a video kind of both about squash in general, but especially about this one. This is my 3-year hybrid of Seminal pumpkin and Canadian crookneck squash. I didn't really intend to do it, so it's also sort of a land race, but right now those are the only two that have been involved. And they just keep coming back as volunteers. When I cut up the fruit, I throw the guts out by one of my trees and end up a bunch more. Right now, the plant is currently fighting against squash vine borers, if I'm not mistaken, but it's Cucurbita moschata, so it should have a good chance of surviving and recovery. I'm going to zoom out and pan across the plant so you can see the damage. I'm told that wiltiness is a classic sign of squash vine borer, and we are right at the height of when they hit us. But this is one plant that has grown this big. The wiltiness is less and less as you reach the edges, so it may just have to reroot in a few spots and recover. But it plumps back up at night, so it doesn't look like it's going to die. Unfortunately, I think that means I can't really do a lot to go in and kill the borers, but these just seem to just tank them every year. They get hit, they wilt a little, and then in a few weeks they'll bounce back and they'll be just fine. So I'm really praying that's what happens again. But the fruit on this one plant are coming in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So that's, that's very interesting to me. Of course, when they're sized like this, I can easily take them, bring them inside, cut them up like zucchini. Very easy to treat them like that. There's a smaller one, a little too soon for it to be treated like zucchini. Another one right over here. And these taste like a better butternut in my experience. Both the Canadian crookneck and the Seminal pumpkin. While they taste a bit different, that one looks a little bit more like a Seminal without a neck. But when they're mature, they taste very much like butternut. They're in the same family as butternut, so that shouldn't be all that shocking. This is, of course, one of my permaculture guilds or permaculture islands, my shea tree. I've shown it multiple times before. And I've transplanted a lot of little plants down in the middle. You can probably also see tea bags I've thrown out here and things like that. There's a big squash right in there. That's going to be a nice one. Of course, if I wanted bigger squash, I could take the time to cut off more of them and have them as summer squash. More energy would be directed to the larger ones. There's a little baby one. Another little baby one. So there's things I could do if I wanted to make them grow bigger, but in my experience, these last all the way through winter and into spring, and oftentimes back into summer again. I've had at least one of them last a full year. So these last really well, even when they're small in size. And my family doesn't really like huge portions of squash all at once. In fact, really, I grow far more squash than we really like to eat far as winter squash. Summer squash, most of my family will just eat all day. So that's not so much a problem, but the storing squash will make it last all the way until next year's harvest off of this plant alone at this rate. And we're only hitting the end of July right now, so there'll be more coming. There's my Siberian pea shrub. So I guess I should get away from talking about just this one plant and this one hybrid, but talk about this species as a whole, Cucurbita moschata. These are solid stems as compared to Cucurbita maxima. Cucurbita maxima is the preferred squash for the squash vine borers. They like to eat it the most, especially anything closely related to a Hubbard squash. So if you want to protect these plants, grow Cucurbita maxima with them. The bugs will attack the Cucurbita maxima and leave these alone. Maxima, though, being as it's hollow stemmed, when the grubs hit it, they kill it pretty much every time. So the only real way to have something that survives is to have something that faces the problem over and over and can prove itself able to tough it out and survive it. So the Cucurbita, moschata are usually your go-to route for having something that will survive squash vine borers. Cucurbita pepo is somewhere in the middle. I've been told that it's really good at surviving, but man, I've never had that kind of luck. In my experience, they die just as quick and just as easy as the Maxima. But these moschatas, they're tough in my experience. They love the heat. Excuse me, sorry, frog in my throat. They love the heat. Way love the heat. In fact, I was kind of worried Seminole pumpkins wouldn't even have a long enough growing season here, way up here in the north. Seminole tribe lives in Florida, from my knowledge. I could be mistaken. But it's a very hot south long season squash. And it makes fruit here, but it definitely would probably benefit from a longer season. Canadian crookneck produced a little better a little bit earlier. So here we have this accidental hybrid from me growing them side by side, and it does really well. Cucurbita moschata is definitely your go-to if you're only going to grow one type, in my opinion, at least in North America where the squash vine borers are a big problem. So I would definitely recommend it. Seminole pumpkin's a great variety. Canadian crookneck is a great variety. Both of them have been recorded storing for over 2 years at room temperature, just simply left intact. So, again, highly recommend them. The other varieties, or the other species, my favorite variety would probably be patty pans, which are Cucurbita pepo. When I can get them to survive long enough, I love them because they make really wonderful, tender summer squash. And if allowed to mature, they form a hard shell, but they still taste like a summer squash. The texture gets a little bit softer, but they form a hard shell, and you can just cut them in half and cook them and eat them out of that shell, and basically have summer squash well into winter, though they won't last all the way around until spring like these will. So that's my other favorite variety when I can get it to survive. Usually we get to about July and they look great, and I look away and I look back and they're gone. It just happens every time with the pepos. And the Maximas are even worse out here. I've had Maximas succeed once, maybe twice, under absolute constant care and supervision, and having a short enough season variety that they could grow and produce, and I could harvest them right as the borers kill them off. So I just haven't had much of any success with Maximas. I've had moderate success with pepos, and I've had great success with moschatas. So highly recommend them. Suppose I'll bounce back to food values again. You could harvest these female flowers where they have a baby attached to them. This one hasn't even opened yet. But you could harvest those for stuffed squash blossoms, if you've ever heard of them. People like to make stuffed squash blossoms. I still haven't tried them. But something that not everybody knows about squash... Oh, I just stepped over something I should show you. Here's the growing end. It's going to keep growing out past here. But that's a little baby. That's a little baby female squash, or female flower, that will form a squash. But as I walk over here, you'll see there are some of these flowers that... These are wilty because it's so hot out, but you see this one doesn't have a baby at the bottom, and it just kind of sticks up in the air. There's an unopened one. No baby at the bottom, just sticking up in the air. These are the male flowers, and the plant will always overproduce males. In fact, some varieties will overproduce males so heavily that it heavily benefits the plant to thin them, to take some off. So you can actually kind of wait until the perfect moment right before these male flowers open, pick them, bring them inside and stuff them, and then either boil, bake, or saute them, and you get stuffed squash blossoms. Another really famous, well-loved, well-appreciated squash family food. And all off the same plant. So certain varieties, if they're good for your area, you can get summer squash, winter squash, squash blossoms, all off the same plant. So I'm a really big fan of them. Had I had more luck and more land in the Southwest when I was growing out there, long before this channel was a thing, Well, I suppose the channel's creation date was back then, but long before I started uploading and all this stuff. They have another species that I would love to try to grow here, but I've just not had any success. That is Cucurbita mixta, also Cucurbita angiosperma. They're both the same species, to my knowledge. They're just different scientific names. One was meant to clarify the other, but people still use both interchangeably. But those ones are really common in the Southwest, though the North does have a variety called a cushaw. Cushaw is popular in the far north is Illinois. There's an Illinois cushaw. But in the Southwest, and down into Mexico, there's a lot of varieties of cushaw. And many of them are eaten both as a summer squash and a mature winter squash. I bought a cushaw as a decoration once and ate it, and it was pretty good. But I haven't had any luck growing them. So there's sort of a longer rundown of different squash species, as well as showing off my, I guess this would be an F2 hybrid. So hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you come back again, see more from my channel. I'll see y'all in another video. Goodbye, guys.